Hello and welcome to Amarman.com YouTube channel. And in this video, we will discuss about a concept of object-oriented ABAP known as inheritance. Now, inheritance is a very important concept and it is used quite extensively in object-oriented ABAP programming. So we must be familiar with inheritance. Now, first thing, what is inheritance? Inheritance basically is the concept with which you can create or derive a new class from an existing class. Now, the existing class will be considered as the parent class or the superclass, and the inheritor will be known as the child class or the subclass. Now, let's understand few points related to inheritance. So, when inheritor or the subclass inherits a superclass, it basically inherits all the components of the superclass defined under the protected and public section. So the inheritor can access all the class components that is under the public section and the protected section, but obviously not under the private section. Private section components of the superclass is available only to the superclass and it cannot be accessed by the child class. So this is one point. Then second point is the subclass components can access the superclass components under public and protected section. So again, within the subclass itself, we can access the components of the superclass and we can access all the components which are under the public and protected section. Then the subclass object can access components of both superclass and subclass defined under public section. So this is very important. Like when we create an object of the subclass, then with the subclass object, you can only access the components that belongs to the public section of both the superclass as well as the subclass. And the final point, the subclass is aware of its superclass, but the superclass is not aware who its subclasses are. And then the inheritance tree can be of any number of levels. So these are some very basic and important points that we should know when we are working with inheritance. How do you define inheritance? What is the syntax of inheritance? So basically, you can create a child class of a superclass by using the keyword inheriting from followed by the superclass name. Fine. So the syntax will be like class, subclass, definition, inheriting from superclass. Then the best way to understand this is with the help of this example. I have created an example over here which explains you the concept of inheritance in detail, and it also tries to cover all these points that I have mentioned right at the top. So let us understand this example. Now, very first thing is that here I have created two classes. So my first class is LCL vehicle. So this is one of the class, and this is the implementation of that class. Fine. So LCL vehicle is the, you can say, the parent class or the superclass. Then using this LCL vehicle superclass, I'm creating or deriving a subclass called as LCL truck. So I'm using here definition inheriting from, and that will give me the subclass. So LCL truck is the subclass, which is derived from the parent class LCL vehicle. All right. So this is one thing. Then next, let us understand that what I have defined inside the parent class, that is LCL vehicle. Now, if you notice here, I have three sections: public section, protected section, and private section defined under the parent class LCL vehicle. Now, the public section and the protected section will be inherited by the subclass LCL truck. All right, but it won't be able to inherit the private section. Fine. So technically, based on our understanding, these are the components that will be available to the child class, but it will not have access to the private section component. Okay. Now, if we notice here, what are the things I have defined inside the public section and the protected section? So in the public section, I have just created a attribute, and in the protected section, I have two methods, set number of wheels and get number of wheels. Okay, so if we look at the implementation, then set number of wheels, basically we'll try to set the number of wheels in the vehicle. And with this set number of wheels method, I am changing the value of attribute number of wheels, which is basically under the private section. All right. And then get number of wheels is basically returning back the value of the attribute number of wheels to the returning parameter r underscore wheel. So there is a pretty simple class. And then if we look into the definition of the subclass, then in the subclass, I have defined two sections here. We have the public section and we have the private section. Now in the public section, basically I'm having a method called as setTruck and another method getTruck. And in the private section, I have an attribute cargo. So what is the implementation of these methods? So here in the implementation of the method setTruck, if you notice, I'm calling the method of the parent class. Method of the parent class. Fine. And this is pretty obvious from our understanding that we discussed earlier, that the subclass component will have access to the public and protected section component of the superclass. So this is the concept, right? Now, based on this concept, the method set number of wheels basically is a method of the parent class, and it's a protected section method. So it can be accessed by the method of the subclass. Then cargo is defined in the subclass itself. It's an attribute, which is fine. And number of vehicles is an attribute of the parent class, which was defined under the public section. So which means that both the protected section and the public section component is available to the child class. Fine. Now let us look at the implementation of the method getTruck. So the implementation of the method getTruck is pretty straightforward. Here I am just printing number of wheels. Now just remember that get number of wheels again is method that belongs to the parent class, and cargo is something that is defined in the subclass itself. So the overall, what is the understanding over here is that in the component of the subclass, we can access the components of the parent class which are under the public and protected section. That is what we have demonstrated here. Next, let us look further into this program and we will understand more concepts related to inheritance. Then we have created a reference to the LCL truck class and created an object of the LCL truck class. Now with this object, I am calling the method setTruck and I'm passing the parameters, required parameters of the method. And finally, here I am calling the attribute number of vehicles using the subclass object. Now again, remember that this number of vehicles attribute belongs to the parent class, and it is defined under the public section. So just remember this point, that with the help of the subclass object, we can call the parent class public section components, and we can even call the subclass public section components. So with the help of the object, you can only call the public section components that belongs to both the parent as well as the subclass. You don't have access to the protected and private section using the object. All right. Now here, local object truck, get truck. Again, this is the method that is defined under the public section of the subclass. Now let me switch to the ABAP system to show you the execution of this program. So here, after creating the object, I am passing the parameters, that is wheels and cargo, to the method and filling in the value of the attributes, that is number of wheels, and then we are filling the value of attribute cargo, and number of vehicles is incremented by 1. Now, number of vehicles is basically defined under the public section of the parent class. And a unique concept of this example is, even if you create an object of the parent class, it will be of little use. Because with this object, you cannot access the protected section, and hence you don't get the wheels, or you cannot update the value of wheels. So this indicates that, for example, let me show you that even if I create a reference to the vehicle, type ref to LCL vehicle, and if I try to create the object, hello vehicle. Now with this object hello vehicle, we can't do anything because we will not have access to any of the methods. So if you see here, I'm just having the access to number of vehicles, but we cannot update the wheels. Now this is the important thing that we should know here, that is the reason I added these methods under the protected section, so that only a proper vehicle type object can be created. So for example, here, if I create a truck, then we can set the number of wheels of the truck and its cargo value. But even if I create an object of LO vehicle, it will be of little use. So if I execute this program, this is what we see. So I have created number of trucks created 1, and number of wheels that I passed is 6, and cargo in tons is 4. And if I create another truck, let's say number of wheels 8, and cargo in tons it can carry 6, and then let's display this value. So every time when you create a vehicle, the value of the number of objects, that is number of vehicles, will be incremented by 1, which will give us how many vehicles we have in total. Let's use a line, and then execute, and this is what we see here. Number of vehicles is 2 as of now, and this is the configuration of the second truck. So with this example, only when you will have the truck object, or let's say we inherit another class and we create another class called as bus, which inherits the vehicle. So only when you have the proper truck or bus object, then only it will be considered as a vehicle, and the value of number of vehicles will be incremented. Now you can create an object of the vehicle, but that will be of little use because you will not be able to set the number of wheels to the vehicle. All right. So this is a typical example in which we have taken advantage of the concept of inheritance to create a real world. One more thing to add here, that the class LCL vehicle is a generalization object. It is more generalized, but the class LCL truck is a specialized vehicle. This is also an important concept of inheritance, that the parent class is generally called as the generalized class, whereas the child class is considered as the specialized class. So with this, we have discussed all points related to inheritance. That's all in this video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, then please subscribe and hit the bell icon.